Empty nesters is our focus today, and how this phase of life can affect our joy. Today we're talking with our guest and good friend, Jenny Baker. Jenny is a single mom of a 20-year-old son and has been involved in many business ventures throughout her career. She is a Christ-centered business professional, entrepreneur, author, and a life and business coach. We're talking about Jenny's latest book, From Empty Nest to Empowered Life. Welcome, Jenny. It is so good to have you back on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. I always love hanging out with you guys. There's always some good banter, lots of laughs, and we dive deep into the word. So great to be here.
I'm glad you're back, Jenny. You are our repeat guest. You are
Yay!
our first repeat guest. And I was thinking about that today.
I know. I love it. I love it. And I love, as you said, our banter back and forth. And I'm so excited about this book because I am in this camp of empty nesting. And I'm so very excited to have you today and talk about it because there's a lot of things in there that, can't wait to hear more about this. And yeah, everybody has their beverage here today. I know I have my people, you have to know, I always have coffee and water. Yeah, I ran out of coffee, so I've got cherry Coke today. It was left over from our visitors that we had here. And yeah, what about you guys? What do you got in your little cup today?
I'm drinking just warm water because I'm having coffee with my girlfriend afterward. And so I don't want to get too caffeinated and then be up half the night. So warm water over here.
And I have some relaxed tea. Mainly, it looked good and it was hot. And I was like, I need something for my throat today. So
that's perfect. You got the cold Minnesota weather there. So
yes.
So Jenny, I think we should just dive right in. And so I want to ask the first question. Can you describe the journey of writing this book?
As with any of my books, I truly never thought I was going to be a writer. Do you know what I mean? I didn't think that title of author was ever going to be on my resume. And so as with the last two and this one, it was just inspired by the Holy Spirit. It was that seed that then grew and grew and grew. And as people walked into my life and poured into me, you know, my mentors around me that sharpened me, as well as just other people in the community, I continue to hear this word empty nester. And obviously, when I hear something a couple times, I take notice. I go, okay, what are we doing, God, here? And then he started to send me more women who are empty nesters. And then I started hearing more of their struggles and more of what they were going through. And I identified a pattern that we're all the same. We just have a different journey through empty nesting. And so at that point in time, I really started to listen about the key ideas that people were struggling with and started writing those down. And then truly, it was just Holy Spirit inspired. It was, what are the questions? What are the emotions that these women are going through? What are the emotions that I felt? Because we all have different emotions. We all are going through something a little differently because we're all, you know, our children are all at different stages, whether they're staying at home and going to college, whether they are going to college, or whether they are heading off to the military, or whether they are heading off to a career and starting out, or some women have children who take a gap year and head out and the kids go traveling for a year. And so everybody has a different story of what empty nest looks like. But we all have the same roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. We all are grieving the loss of one stage of life and then experiencing what does the next stage actually look like, because our identity came so many times from what we were doing with our children. And as mothers, most of us poured 99% of our time and our efforts into those children. And now we have 99% of our time and energy left to do what with, right? And so there's this huge gap that most of us women experience. And so I wanted to be able to fill that gap with God first, and then figure out what God wants us to do with that gap in our life. So, yeah.
Can you speak to the person that's going to be going into this season of life? Maybe they have children that are close to graduating or close to flying the nest. How would one prepare besides reading your book? Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's a great question. I would say put yourself in places where there's a lot of other empty nester women and just be loved on and poured into so you can prepare emotionally. I don't think there's ever a real like strategy on how to prepare for empty nesting because we all are emotionally attached to our children in different ways. But it's just being aware that this stage is coming and that it doesn't have to be a pitfall and a stumbling block and fall into depression. We don't have to do it that way, but we can actually look at it as a way to pour into our children in a
Mm,
new way. As they're
yes.
leaving the nest, we can empower them and we can look at the positives of that. But we also have to be mindful of what our emotions are and identifying them and not just pushing them down and allowing ourselves to grieve that process of them leaving, but also being excited for them in their journey as well.
Yes, I always think of the roots and wings, right?
Mm,
And give
yes.
them roots and give them wings, so
Hmm.
kinda grounded me. I wanna ask you a question. When I was looking through the book initially, I noticed that you had this awesome instruction for each section because it's broken up into sections, and it really gives the reader a clear direction. For me, I was like, "Oh, this is so insightful." Can you talk about just maybe share with our listeners how the book is structured for use?
Yeah. So the book is structured in 12 different sections. For instance, like personal growth and self discovery, emotional exploration, new relationships, new purpose and identity, new adventures and experience. The one that I think is the hardest is letting go and embracing change. And then we dive into gratitude and reflection. And there's a bunch of other ones too. But I think the biggest one is self care and wellness, is the one that most of us women struggle with. So, what I did was I put an explanation in the beginning of how to use each section and allowing you to give yourself permission in that section to do certain things, whether it would be feel the emotion of it or whether it would be go explore a new hobby, and be okay if you don't like that hobby. And then at the end, actually, this was not part of the book. I have to be honest, you guys, it was only 10 sections. And then at the end of the book, when I realized my son was coming home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, I thought, oh gosh, here's a whole nother level roller coaster of emotions coming.
Yes.
And so I thought, oh my gosh, I better add that. So we do have a section in there on kids coming home for the holidays, as well as kids moving home for the summer, because that's a whole nother transition in there too.
Mm,
All these things that I never would have thought about unless I walked through them.
yes.
Yeah. So to your point, Carol, I've given people permission to start at any section because what I found was that as I was speaking with empty nester women, everyone was struggling with a different area first. And so now most of them start with the letting go and embracing change, but not all, because some of them start with the emotional exploration because they've got all these emotions and they just want to figure out what they are. You know what I mean? Kind of sort them out. But then the women who purchased the book right around the holidays, they said they started with kids coming home for the holidays because that was most important to them. So I've just given you permission. It is 365 days. There is 12 sections, but you don't need to do it in any order at all. You can have fun with it and start where you want to start, and you can jump around as well.
Oh, that's so neat. I love that. I really like that idea.
You
That's
took the
great.
words out right out of my mouth, Bethany. I do love that too. As I was looking through, I'm like, "Oh, I could read this one right now or this one," because it was Christmas time and I was having some time with my son. So, I found it the whole thing very uplifting and contemplative. I wanted to talk about how contemplative those questions are, and, it takes time to just ponder, and just sit there and sit in it. So, I did wanna ask this question. If someone has minimal time, think of the woman who has many kids or just a busy lifestyle, and I know it can be hard, it has been for me in the past, trying to carve out time to add that next thing to my life that would help me, honestly. And so, how would you guide them to use this book, or how could they fit it in? What kind of suggestions do you have there?
That's a great question because I've actually had that question a few times now
Mm,
with busy professional women. They say, "Okay, I want to dive in. I want to go deeper with myself and kind of sort these things, but I don't have a lot of time." And so the thing that I've suggested to them is read the question, hold on to it, and think about it during the daytime. You know what I mean? Maybe it's at lunch, maybe it's on your drive time, but you
Mm.
don't have to like actually sit down for 10 or 15 minutes and read the book. Yes, some women do because they like to journal, but for busy professionals like myself, it's one thing to just go, okay, what's the question of the day that I actually want to think about? And then I allow thoughts to come up throughout the day, which I think is actually better for me. And then I just grab my notepad, I make a little note of that, and I'm like, oh, okay, when I have time this weekend, or I want to reflect on that a little more, or okay, that's a sufficient answer for me now. So,
Ooh, I like that. That is really good.
I was already thinking of a friend of mine who's going through something similar. Her child hasn't flown the coop yet, and I was
mm,
just thinking about the different stages of the leaving part. When you're driving them places and they're with you all the time and you're feeding them and clothing them and with them, and then they get their license, and it's like one step strings have been cut at that point, and they're a little bit freer, but yet they're still a little bit more grounded, they can't totally leave, and then you have they're in a lot of activities, so then they end up not being around that much either, and then they actually fly the coop. So God just he gradually gets you ready for the actual flying and the actual takeoff. Does that make sense? He doesn't just rip them out of your hands, out of your life.
I agree.
It's a slow process, and I think there are some moms in that middle part where it's not like they're totally gone. So, would you start with the letting go? I mean, how do you start that if they're not totally right there where their kids are coming back for fall break or winter break, but they're still.
They're approaching empty nesting?
Yeah.
Mm. Bethany, I totally agree. There is a transitional stage between when our children are 16 and now have their license, and there's a whole new freedom right there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
then they're at home less, and you're like, when are you coming? When are you going? And how come we're not hanging out together anymore? Yep. Um,
Yeah.
so I believe God allows that stage, like you say, to prepare for the empty nest stage. But that stage is a stage that is like that pre-empty nest where you're starting to feel those emotions as well. And I have had quite a few women say, I'm getting this from my girlfriend who is in the pre empty nest stage. And so I actually reflected on that and thought about it. And there's so many of these questions that would work for the pre empty nest stage to prepare you as well. Like the daily practices for peace and well being. Like we could be doing that as a mom when our children are 16, 17, 18, and getting ready to fly the coop, or the relationship area, like creating those new relationships. And what do those relationships look like? What's important to the relationships in our life now? Because we're obviously at a different stage in life, right? We don't have a little kiddo, a toddler at home. So
Mhm.
who do we gravitate to, and what relationships are truly important as well as that self-care and wellness. I don't think we can start self care and wellness early enough as moms,
Mm.
right? We should be doing it throughout our pregnancy. We should be doing it throughout toddlerhood. We should be doing it through teenage years. Because if we don't have the mask on our own face, how are we going to help anyone else, right?
Mhm.
So the self care and wellness has been the hardest one for women to adjust to. And so I get a lot of feedback on that section saying, wow, that was impactful because I never understood what self care and wellness actually was
Mm.
because I've
That
focused so much of my time on my family and my kid and nothing on myself.
Mm. And, I feel like a lot of this, of course, is tied into our joy and how it can either steal joy or grow joy.
Mhm.
And I love that section around gratitude and reflection. Could you just talk about that a little bit? How that came to be and in your own words, what comes to mind?
So, my belief is that we need to praise God even in the storm, right? He wants our praise. He's always working behind the scenes, whether it's in a storm or whether it's on the mountaintop. And so that piece came from that of shifting our emotions of like downtroddenness and like, oh my gosh, my child's leaving and when are they coming home? And as soon as they walk out the door, am I going to hear from them in 2 days, in a week, in a month? Like there's so many unknowns when that child walks out the door and heads to college or heads off to the military or heads off to their career that I really wanted to turn it back to God and just being grateful for what he has done, what he is
Mm.
doing, and what he is going to do. And so the reflection piece also comes on that, because as a mom, we can look back and we can be grateful for all the steps the Lord has allowed us to walk through with our children. He's allowed us the wisdom to see and to know how to prepare not only ourselves but our children for different stages of life, right? As they were toddlers, we had to prepare them to be teenagers. And so
Mhm.
there's always a preparation stage. And so just the ability to reflect back and look at all the goodness and all the ways that God has protected us, provided for us, and given us wisdom in each step of life, I think is so impactful to hold on to.
Yes, that is so rich, and I'm in that like I said, I'm in the camp too of empty nesting, and I find that that reflection we always talk about, switching things around when we talk on this podcast, if something's bringing us down or something isn't sitting right with us, turn it around. What is the good? What is good in this situation? And wow, for your child to go out and do what they're doing or how much educating they're getting and all of those things and truly take the focus off ourselves and look at them and be grateful for what God's doing. Like you said, that it's about him working in our lives always. So I love that. That is so good. There's so many good sections in this book. And I love how you put it together, Jenny. If you had one thing to say about any of those chapters, I could just pick one out. I look at the daily practices for peace and well-being.
Mm.
You talked about self-care for a little bit. Is there anything that you want to share specifically that comes to mind for people to know what they can get out of this?
Yeah, I would say don't be scared of the new purpose and identity. And that is a section. That's why I'm saying that. So don't be scared of that section. But my prayer is, when I pray over these books, is that people will find peace and surrender to what God has for them next, because it really is a new chapter. But that whole section on new purpose and identity, it's a deep one. And, some things are light. I'll be honest, Carol, I know you've read some of this book, and it's like, some questions are lighter and some questions are really reflective. They get to
Mm,
the heart. You know what I mean? They
yes.
make us think. And that section is a little bit more of a thinking section, I'll be honest. And so I just pray that women, when they look at that, they don't get scared away from it, but that they actually embrace what God has for them next, because it's a new season, it's a new chapter, and God can do anything, right? He can do
Mhm.
anything. And so I just pray that they would look at that and embrace it instead of running away from that section.
Yes, I love that you said that because there was one where I'm like, "Ooh, I don't think I wanna touch that one right now." It was like, "Oh, I have to come back to that one," and that's okay too. I mean, I think
Yes, I agree.
you'll know when you're ready. But yeah, oh, so many rich things. Bethany, do you have any other questions?
I had some thoughts about Hannah in the Bible, First Samuel chapter 1, and it talks about, first of all, her cry for wanting children, and then God giving her a blessing of a child and her giving him back to God, like, physically, not only spiritually. And I think if you remember, a lot of people will dedicate their children to the Lord when they're babies. And just remembering what the blessing was that you prayed over your child, that you got them just for a
Mm.
season. You knew it was a season, you thought it was gonna be a long season, and then, oh, you blink your eyes and it's done, or
Right.
you're not
Yeah.
needed. And as a child who left the coop and now is actually back, I don't care where you're at, what you're doing in life, you still want your mom.
Yeah.
There's something about, you might fly the coop, but as a child, when I remember I got sick the first time and I all I wanted was my mom. And so you are still needed. It's just you actually probably will become more cherished because they will realize what they had. Because I think sometimes as kids, we're like, "I can't wait to get out," like, "I can't wait to leave." And now it's like, "Wait, I miss my parents or I miss my mom, my siblings." But Hannah giving Samuel back to the Lord after waiting for so long for him, and that might be some parents that, maybe it took a long time for you to have a child, maybe you had some infertility, and so the thought of having to let that go is hard. It's so hard, but I
Mhm.
love that you have resources. So that was I guess, a comment. I don't know if you wanna say anything about that. I'll let you speak on that. Otherwise, I do have another comment.
Oh, go ahead. That was amazing. That was amazing.
So, then the other thought I had, you were talking about identity and how a lot of times it's wrapped up in your children because that's your season of life. And so sometimes friendships can go to the wayside, or you might have moms that are friends of your kids, like there's that. But you might wake up one day and go, "Who did I hang out with before I had children?" Or "Where are my
Mm,
friends now?" Or maybe my friends are younger or older where they're not going through this season of life. And I just got an idea for that person is start something in your church. Take Jenny's book and start a
mhm,
women's Bible study or a group. Go to a coffee shop.
mm,
Maybe you have a friends group online. Maybe you have a few friends that are starting to go through this and say, "Hey, let's do this together. Let's invite people in our life." Because the thing is, I feel like community and like mindedness is a really good place. So maybe speak on that.
mhm. Bethany, I absolutely love your idea
Wow.
because, yes, it is a lot easier to do life when we're together in a community, correct? So
Mhm.
I love your idea about the Bible study, whether it's online or whether it's in somebody's group. But I would speak to the empty nester and even the pre empty nester is to get connected with those women who are like minded and in the same stage that you are, because there is so much strength in coming together and sharing the journey.
I agree, that's phenomenal.
And I don't think you have to be a super, some people are like, "I can't lead a group." You can. You can use a structure of your book to lead a group. You have questions that are
Yes.
thought provoking. And so sometimes you just have to step out in faith, and it's okay to be scared because in a group setting like that, I feel that it will lead itself in a way. Who knows? This could be another avenue you'd had no idea was a ministry that God wants you in this season. And who knows the friendships that can come out of that.
Yeah, that's great. Love that idea.
I agree.
I have grown through many a Bible study, and this would be a great way to get other perspectives, what other women are going through at their empty nester phase.
And also, I'm just going to add, because we haven't talked about this yet, but for those women who want to do the Bible study, actually, in the back of the book, there's an appendix for each section that gives you Bible verses that you can reference as well.
That's
I
perfect.
added that as a strength piece. Yep, because we all know that at times I need a Bible verse when I'm trying to figure something out. And some of those questions, like you say, Carol, are thought provoking. And so I created the Bible verse resource in the back so we could jump into that when you're thinking, oh boy, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to answer this question. This is too deep. This is too hard. I don't know. My emotions are all over the place, And then we can get grounded and rooted in what the Lord actually says.
Yes, I love that, and I haven't even gotten to those yet because I was looking through the questions, so that's so great that you pointed that out. That's perfect
Yeah.
for a Bible study setting too. Finally, I wanna ask, what do you hope readers will take away from your book, Jenny, in a general way?
I want them to take away that there's actually hope in this stage and that God has a purpose in every season of life and that He never stops using us. And that we can actually use this empty nester stage to press into Him and to find that peace and to come to a place of surrender. And God's going to use us for this next stage of life because we have so much more time. He doesn't want us to waste our time. He wants to use our time. And so
Mm,
my hope is that you would realize that God has a purpose at every stage in life, and especially this one.
mm, that is so rich. Yes, and
Mhm.
truthful.
Mhm.
Well, we have a link in the show notes to get this latest book by Jenny Baker and Jenny's other inspiring books as well. Thank you so much, Jenny, for being on our show today. It is always a pleasure, and I look forward to actually your next book coming out too, whatever that is down the road. I know there will be another one.
Oh, thank you, ladies. It's always so fun to see your smiles and spend time with you.
Same. We love having you. I agree with what Carol said, Jenny. Thank you.
Okay, you know what? It's time to pour out our joy. So now, Jenny, we have a little spotlight here where we all do our own little joy spotlight of what has happened in the last week or, even in the last month that brought joy to our life. And so we'd love it if you could share one too. Bethany, do you want to go first?
Sure. Last year, I started a new job, most of you know that, and God gave me a word when I started, and it was so very, very
Prominent.
yeah, that's the word, thank you. It was just on the forefront, and it was from Esther, and it was, "You are here for such a time as this." And that was
Mm.
my phrase, and going into this job, and I was like, so I'm looking, because that's what you do. You're like,
Mhm.
Where is it?" And I spent, 2 or 3 months looking for this joy the joy of getting what this information was. So fast forward till about 2 weeks ago, and there was a situation that happened, and God used me. I'll just say that. God used me in a big way,
Mm,
and
mm,
I didn't realize anything, and I didn't think about that word either. And I was driving home talking with a friend, and we were talking about the Bible and just reading through the Bible for the year, January, I'm reading through the Bible. What are you reading? And we were just talking about the word, and all of a sudden, that phrase, God brought that to my mind
mm,
in light of the situation that I was going through, and I was like, "Oh, oh," and I got so excited. I had so much joy because it was like the culmination of this thing that God told me. But, it
mm,
took 9 months or longer to reveal what it was, and when I was going through it, I didn't see it. I did not
mm,
see it. There was no neon sign. So the joy of just the that God confirmed why that that phrase in the Bible, and, the joy in my heart and just the light bulb and the excitement. What I said was like, "I got it. I got it. I get it. I get it now." I kept saying that to God. So, I know that I'm not really expounding on a lot, but it was just so, rich. It was so fulfilling,
mm,
and just
mhm,
it brought me so much joy because sometimes when you're walking through life, you wonder if you're really making any kind of difference. You're wondering, "Is this where I should be?" You've
mhm,
heard from the Lord maybe
mm,
a while ago, right? And then he hasn't said anything, or there's not like you just kind of feel like you're just doing your life and that's it, right? Well, little do you know, if you're obedient and you listen, God will reveal you are
Yes.
in the right place. You're exactly where I want you. And that was that
mm,
moment for me. And that brought
mhm,
me so much joy.
Oh, I love that share,
mhm,
and, another add to that is he may be shaping you in that 9 months you said it took, he may be shaping you during that time before that big reveal of what it is,
Yeah,
mhm,
he puts things in place.
completely.
I've found that too, so
Yeah.
I love that, Bethany. So,
mm.
Jenny, have you thought of one
Awesome.
yet?
I have actually, for the empty nester moms out there, they're going to totally understand this one. So, my son is on J term right now, home from college for 6 weeks. And the joy of being able to spend quality time with your child, sitting on the couch, talking, having meals together. And I can say this out loud, and every empty nester mom's going to understand. I actually got to do his laundry last week because he was at work. And I said, well, the pile's overflowing, so I'll do it for you. And
Mhm.
just being a mom and being a helper to him brought me so much joy. So not only is it seeing his face at the house, in my house and having his presence here, it's doing the laundry and doing meals with him. So
Mm.
I
yeah.
love that. Oh,
Mhm.
I love that joy share. Mine's around my son as well.
Fun.
So he came out to Florida with his girlfriend, and we had the time of our lives for 6
Mm.
days. You guys, it
Oh.
was jam-packed. It was so joyful. And speaking of Jenny getting ready for it, we made these cookies ahead of time. Yeah, they were gone by probably day 4. Everybody was, but I haven't made cookies for them for a while, so
Oh.
that was
Mm.
special, and, of course,
Mhm.
going to church together and hearing a phenomenal message.
Mm.
But so many firsts for everybody in Florida who hadn't experienced all of these things was so filling. Yeah,
Mhm.
including me. I even got to check out this new thing. Have you ever heard of, Corvina fish? I think I'm saying that Corvina?
No.
It's
No.
oh my gosh, we went to a place and had it, and it was actually kind of a pre-celebration for my birthday. And I
Ooh.
tried this. I tried oysters and crab claws and then this fish. And I'm like, I don't know, because it comes out, you guys, and it's just this fish that's been cooked and it's like divided up, but it's whole. And you flip it over and have
Ooh.
the other part too. But you guys, I'm like, okay, well, I'll try it. And I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever had. I am
Ooh.
so sold on it. And I guess this is a type of preparation you can do to any specific fish, but this was a red snapper and it was so good, you guys. You've got to get it if you
Ooh.
get the opportunity. But yeah, that was my joy spotlight, spending time with, of course, my son, my son's girlfriend, and my husband. It's quality time like that with family that matters. I
Yes.
just was filled up.
That sounds amazing. Sounds like a perfect empty nester mama week.
Yes, yes. All right. Remember to check out the show notes for that link to Jenny's book, From Empty Nest to Empowered Life, a 365-day journey of self-discovery. Now it is time. We're going to do our pour out our joy. So, Jenny, you want to lead us off?
Pour
Out.
Your
joy.
Yes.